Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 28. I have Marc Tancer of Taggart Trading. He's an expert in precious metals, and he's also been a long-time libertarian activist. Was an intern at the Foundation for Economic Education as well. How are you, Marc?
Chris, I'm excellent, and it's wonderful to be here.
Yeah. So, first of all, how'd your libertarian journey begin? Where did it start?
Lafayette College, 2008 in the fall. I was a sophomore, and seeing the bank bailouts, knowing that they were immoral, feeling that they were immoral, taking money from my parents, and giving it to people who made bad bets on Wall Street, didn't seem to make any moral sense. And then Ron Paul and Peter Schiff, I heard them talking about why the bailouts were economically destructive, throwing good money after bad, good capital after bad capital, sustaining unsustainable and bad behavior, right? Wasteful behavior. So that was what got me into thinking about lots of issues. And so I would say that it was the bailouts that it's not that they made me a libertarian. It's I realized I was a libertarian because even back in middle school or high school, there was some news. So I graduated high school in 2007. So sometime prior to that, there was some news about the airlines being bailed out. Maybe it was when I was growing up. And I was against that. I didn't understand bankruptcy procedure, which would explain why it's not a huge issue, if there's a bankruptcy here and there, and why bailouts are unnecessary. But I still understood it was immoral, right? Regardless of the economics of it. So, and I was against minimum wage, and I had flashes of glimpses being against the prohibition of drugs. It's like, it's your body, but it was that 2008 when everything really came together. I learned about libertarianism just a few months prior, in fact, in the spring of 2008.
Yeah. If there were any airline bailouts, they might have been after the World Trade Center. I don't know if there were any around 2006, but it's
no, but it was definitely not the year before I graduated high school. It was sometime before that. Yeah. It could have 2001, 2002 could make sense. And it could have been earlier in the 90s.
Lafayette's more of an engineering type school. What's the political environment at a school like Lafayette, as opposed to, say, the Ivy League or something like that?
Yeah, so Lafayette College, and I believe this is similar with many of the other Patriot League schools like Lehigh, like Bucknell. I know Michael Malice went to Bucknell, and he's not too fond of his memories there, as far as I know, but he recounts probably similarly where more conservative than the average school. So maybe just a bit left of center rather than crazy left of center.
Yeah.
That's maybe how I would describe it. I know that when I was there, I graduated 2011. I had a couple of, professors in the Gov Law department that were definitely on the left. One of whom didn't particularly hide it, but she didn't go out of her way to obsess over it either. But she had actually been a Socialist Party candidate in one of the Eastern European states after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And so I knew she was a socialist. And one class she went on about how the IMF is a capitalist institution. So I said, wait a minute, taking paper money from central banks and governments around the world and loaning them out at usurious interest rates to third world countries, that's not really, it's not free market capitalism. They're dollar signs, but it's, I wouldn't describe it as capitalistic. So I called her out in the class very politely, and she gave me the grade I earned. It was like a B+ or A-, something like that. She never took off for me being an outspoken libertarian by then. But I would say that describes most of the faculty, that you could give your opinions and they actually liked you if you had any opinions at all and were active in the class. So at least at the time, they were, I wouldn't even say forgiving, much better than that. They were positively pro anybody having opinions if they were going to do stuff.
Yeah.
I've heard more recently, I don't know about how they treat students, but there's been faculty who have left because there's been some hard left and hard statist stuff come down at Lafayette, unfortunately. So what I can say, it's very, so more conservative on average, based on where the students come from and, largely, and being a, wealthier school on average. there's one specific strain that goes through the campus itself, and the history of Lafayette College is the Kirby family. And Fred Morgan Kirby has been a huge donor. I think Fred Morgan Kirby might have a center at either Hillsdale or Grove City or one of these big schools. He has a building at Lafayette College, and several of his family have buildings named after them. The Fred Morgan Kirby Hall of Civil Rights, which is the government law building, was in 1932 or 33, during the depths of the Great Depression, when the building was built. It was the most expensive building, maybe per square foot. By some metric, it was the most expensive building built in America. And it was a middle finger to the socialists and the collectivists. There's a motto on the outside, like, I will do with mine what I will. And then there's a plaque inside describing the positive influence of Western civilization and what the plaque describes as Anglo-Saxon ideals of constitutional government and property rights, this kind of thing. So it made a brouhaha on my campus. There were some leftist agitators, kind of pissed off about that as being racist and sexist, but the plaque stayed up. They got a little conciliatory plaque next to it. But point is, the plaque did not come down. If the plaque came down, it would be, a typically far left campus. The plaque did not come down. So, yeah.
One thing I've sometimes heard about schools like this is that you get a lot of students who are kind of pissed off that they didn't get into the Ivy League. And maybe that's why they lose some of this idealism. Could that be true or not?
Not something I had thought of.
Yeah.
It's possible. I know that there are people who do apply to both Patriot League and Ivy League schools. Yeah. So we're kind of second tier, not too much under them, widely regarded as such anyway. So anyway, good point. I hadn't considered it.
But if you're an engineer, it might be you're mad because you didn't get to get into MIT or someplace like that, or
perhaps.
But it could be. But yeah. It's always interesting to know what kind of environment you have at these schools. And I can imagine it's gotten a lot worse even since then. But you also, and it's interesting too, you mentioned this professor. She was a socialist in Eastern Europe after the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Correct.
I just look at myself and say, you have no excuse.
Right. No, you're right. I think it's crazy. That's partly why I brought it up.
Yeah, but I've also learned long ago that the left sees their own ideas and then everybody else is just a fog to them. So John Mons and Richard Spencer are the same as far as they're concerned.
As far as who's concerned?
As far as the left is concerned, John Mons and Richard Spencer are the same. John Mons is a black libertarian. Richard Spencer is a white supremacist.
Right.
Neither one is a socialist. That's all that matters to them.
Right. No,
they don't care about anything else. You're either a socialist or you're not a socialist. And if you're not a socialist, there's no difference. It doesn't matter.
Right. It's funny. I hadn't even known of John Mons until was it 2018 or even 2020. I can't believe it took me so long to learn about who this guy is. Great guy.
Oh yeah. He's a great guy. Really nice guy. I'd love to see him run for any. Love to see him try running for president again. But
he's done lots of great work in Georgia.
Yeah, he's done a lot of great work in Georgia. So you were at Lafayette and Lehigh, and then you after that you were an intern at FEE at the Foundation for Economic Education for a while.
Yeah, I interned there between my third and fourth year that summer of college, and it was my second libertarian internship. I had interned at IHS the summer before that. So that would have been 2009. So yeah, summer of 2010, I interned at FEE. It was great. I was up in the mansion when they still had the mansion in Irvington on Hudson, north of New York City, and very historic place. Leonard Read sat there, and I'm sure Henry Hazlitt hung out there, and probably Ayn Rand for all I know. And I worked as we discussed earlier today for a minute. I worked in the archives in the basement, largely just labeling file folders and stuffing the file folders with letters and correspondence between two different people. So I had one file folder for correspondence between Leonard Read and Ayn Rand, for example. another one with, let's say, maybe Henry Hazlitt and Leonard Reed. So it seems like the FEE, that FEE inherited Henry Hazlitt's papers, so all of his records. So there were Medicare or Social Security statements from Henry Hazlitt that I looked at. Yeah, so that was pretty ridiculous, but lots of nitty gritty. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Ludwig von Mises could have hung out there, and some of the other people.
Sure.
I don't know how much. Well, Rand was in New York for a while, so she could have hung out there. It's interesting because Rand and the Ayn Rand Institute, all that crowd, has always maintained friendly relations with FEE. They've never really had any issues with FEE, although they really do. They've certainly burned a lot of bridges here and there over the years, but they always were on good terms with FEE. And I remember I read Anthem at the library there. It's certainly a lot. It's definitely been a hub, and of course, being near New York, that helps too. I mean, and you being at Lafayette, you didn't have to go that far to Irvington. You didn't have to go that far to go down to IHS. How was interning at IHS? What did you do there?
So that was only a few months after I became a libertarian, so I was pretty new to the whole thing, and I was still learning about lots of issues and lots of the history. So there was I guess it would have been actually Murray Rothbard would have been one of the many pictures on the wall there. And in spite of the fact that it's literally a Beltway institution, they respect, all the good people, which is nice. So I didn't know who Murray Rothbard was. By then I knew who, I had heard of Mises. I don't know if I could identify his face, but looking at him on the wall, I asked somebody, "Oh, is that Barry Goldwater?" I knew who Barry Goldwater was by then, and they look kind of similar, I'm pretty sure. So anyway, so I learned about Mises and Baldy Harper, who founded IHS, who came from FEE, I believe.
Yes.
And so I learned about some of the very basics, and then had some great instruction on like once a week or a couple times a week, we had a professor come in to talk to our intern group, which was really cool. And I mentioned to you before, Pete Bedke, we met him. I'm pretty sure he gave us, a half-hour lecture on something. We may have had a monetary economics lecture. What was her name? Something Marty or Marty something. I think
Marty Zupan.
Yes. She was running IHS at the time. And she even, I think, gave us an address. I forget what it was about, but it was super interesting. And we had a couple readings, actually. One of them from one of the Koch brothers probably about market-based management, which I thought was interesting. I don't know how effective it could possibly be in the think tank and educational organization world, but it's certainly within those constraints, it's intuitively an interesting way to go as far as management. So read about that. Read Hayek's essay on intellectuals and socialism. And I'm sure I read something about Hayek and decentralized information. So it was a really good foundation to somebody like me who was just becoming a libertarian.
Yeah, the question of where IHS is still fighting a lot of the good fights, and they're not really political. They're just trying to get more people into academia. Whether that's going to work or not, I don't really know. I've gotten fairly pessimistic about libertarians ever having any presence in academia personally, but I don't know if you've got an opinion on that or not. But
I mean, some libertarians are even more heady than I am and more into ideas. So I think there's always going to be some libertarians who want to go into academia. And at least in America, there's still enough academic freedom that some of our people will get in. They'll slip through the cracks, or there will be an explicit non-bias at certain institutions, regardless of your philosophy. So as long as you show yourself competent, I think you'll be able to get these jobs, and some libertarians will want to. Lots of us we wouldn't want to be in academia because we just want to produce and make money and or otherwise recreate. We don't want to be, I'm not a reader. I'm very curious about stuff, but I'm just not a reader and not really a writer either. So, you know, academia, not for somebody like me.
Yeah. Any really good people that stand out for you at FEE or IHS when you were there?
I mean, it's been so long. I just, you know, I remember, as I said, Peter Bedke, Marty Zupan, the accountant at IHS, also interesting guy, Gary something, I want to say. He's a known guy in the travel world, like about getting travel points and stuff and doing super inexpensive vacations. He's like a world-known expert, and he was and might still be the IHS accountant or bookkeeper. So you meet a lot of interesting people, you know, along these ways. At FEE, I gave Larry Reed a drive from the Westchester Airport once back to the mansion. I don't think he was staying at the mansion that summer, but he came in for a meeting or for maybe evening at FEE or for whatever it was. Maybe it was for for the seminar. Super interesting guy. Really liked talking with him a few times, and we're still friends to this day. I've seen him at many events, even down here in South Florida.
Yeah, I don't think there's I said for a long time, I don't think there's a better ambassador for the free market ideas than Dr. Lawrence Reed. He's a really nice guy, very knowledgeable, lots of experience. He can go out and talk to people on the street. He can go into a ballroom and talk to a bunch of PhDs, and he's just very articulate. I mean, I don't know how he is on non-economic issues, but on free market Austrian economists, he's outstanding. I wouldn't.
Yep.
And just one of the nicest people. I mean, I was fortunate. I met him back at the July 1904 summer seminar at FEE, and that was just a wonderful week. I don't know if anybody will ever recreate a seminar like that when you have 24 people all staying in the mansion or the carriage house, and you're just one big family. I mean, you know, we slept with our doors open. We just, you know, we were just all there learning about Austrian economics for a week, and just a lot of great people there, a lot of nice people there. It was a great week. I know they still have seminars, but they're, you know, they're more off-site, and there's no justification, unfortunately, for having a mansion like that anymore.
Right. Yeah. They were already in Atlanta when I started, but they were starting the transition right around when I was there, and I was only there for 8 weeks or so. It was just that one summer. So, and I did stay at the mansion during the week. Most nights I stayed at the mansion, Monday night through Thursday night. Typically then, and sometimes even Sunday night. Typically I would go home, North Jersey, so maybe a 45-minute drive or so.
Did you do an IHS seminar as well, or?
Unfortunately, no. I was only at IHS for like 5 or 6 weeks. If I had been there for the full 8 or 10 weeks, I definitely would have gone to at least one of the seminars. They would have flown me out to wherever. There was a student who got the internship from to IHS from Lafayette College. I don't know if we always had one every summer, but the fund that I mentioned to you before when we spoke on the phone this morning, the Whitman Fund, which gave a nominal stipend to Lafayette College students to do various internships in the Liberty sphere. The fund was administered by Professor Donald Chambers. She apparently was not a libertarian, and she apparently, got the wrong impression of, quote, the Institute for Humane Studies based on its name, and probably heard not doing research. That after a couple weeks, she realized, this is not for me. So they had my name on a list, apparently. Lafayette did, and Don Chambers did. So he called me, and a week later, I was in DC, doing the first commute. In fact, living in DC, taking the train to Arlington every day.
There's probably some confusion with another organization that's called the Institute for Humanist Studies.
I doubt she could have been into that, but who knows? I don't think that was the confusion. But.
But there is definitely that organization out there. It's interesting how that works out. Yeah, by the way, you mentioned that Kirby back at Lafayette. Did that person have something to do with the sweepers?
The sweepers,
Kirby sweepers. Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Just that was one brand of vacuums. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. So you've been in and out. What do you do right now then?
I'm a full-time, mostly full-service coins and precious metals dealer. I I don't do medieval coins, and I don't do ancient coins. But aside from that, you know, I have broad-based knowledge of run-of-the-mill foreign coins, U.S. coins. I do U.S. paper money. I've done a lot of Confederate paper money over the past few years, really trying to build a niche within Confederate paper money, which, you know, any dealer that buys anything from the public, they'll have a very basic working knowledge of Confederate paper money, but they won't go out and try to buy it and stock it from other dealers just to try to retail it. And I actually do. So that's kind of one of my niches in the industry. I also do lots of art silver, and I'm not hugely known in the art silver community, but by the important people, I have working relationships with a lot of the important people in the art silver community, like old art bars from the 60s and 70s, old weird collectible poured ingots, and I do some of the newer stuff as well with limited mintage stuff. But anyway, so I have a following for art silver, like at the big coin, couple big coin shows I do every year, because it's also something that most dealers don't try to stock and don't try to display tons of it.
Yes.
I do trade shows, gun shows, coin shows. I set up at some Liberty events, including Libertarian Party of Florida and Libertarian National Conventions. I set up at Pork Fest every summer. Been an attendee since 15 and a vendor since 2017 at Pork Fest up in New Hampshire. And I have lots of customers from all over the country, mostly referrals from people that I've met at these various trade shows and liberty-oriented events.
Yes.
Oh, and I should say bullion is my main thing. Gold and silver bullion is where I spend most of my time and most of my capital. So in addition to the paper money and rare coins and art silver, I do lots of silver and gold bullion.
Yes. The Fountainhead Forum is not tax advice. It is not legal advice. It is not financial advice. Thank you. So anyway, so
in fact, I never recommend people buy gold and silver. I personally think it's a good idea for people who don't have debt and who have some money to have a small amount of that money in physical gold and silver. I personally think it's a good idea, but I feel a lot of people who get into metals probably go way overboard, and maybe they'll be right one day. And I certainly love serving them and working as close as I can with them, and love making money off them. But I suspect that I know some people who probably buy way too much for it to be considered a responsible financial decision. All I do is, once you've made the decision to buy gold and or silver, I can give you the advantages and disadvantages of each form and make you a liquid two-way market, provide you with a sell price if you want to buy it from me, and provide you with a buy price if you want to sell it to me. That's the best I can do. I certainly don't give advice whether you should buy gold or silver, but if you've decided, okay, you want to buy gold, I'll say, if you want to buy it for reasons X, Y, and Z, buy this thing right now. If you want to buy it for reasons A, B, C, buy that thing right now. You know, so I can give individualized recommendations if you've already made the decision to pull the trigger.
That's got to require quite a bit of security then, doesn't it? Or
yeah, I mean, security is always number one on my mind, and any coin dealer who has experience and kind of, or at least was brought up in the industry would know. I wasn't raised in the industry, except my uncle, who I did work for my first 4 years and 3 months full-time in the industry before going out on my own. You know, he would visit us occasionally growing up, and he didn't live too far from us in North Jersey growing up. So sometimes he would have some inventory with him, and it was a suitcase, and he always had to be with it, you know, and he always had to be aware of his surroundings, and knowing. I didn't know the value of his stuff, but I knew it had some value. And knowing that he always had to be in the same room with it for the sake of insurance, that if he's not looking at it, if he doesn't have it within eyesight and it's stolen, it's not covered. But, you know, if he has it with him and it's stolen, it's covered. Just stuff like that I was always aware of. And I'd helped him out for a couple shows back in high school and college. So, you know, traveling to and from shows, whether it's through the airport or on the road. You know, always just aware of your surroundings during traveling is the most important thing, and not doing stupid stuff. Always be, regardless of the insurance regulation, always being physically with your stuff. unless it's locked up in a commercial safe, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you can get safe deposit boxes, although you might, might just get your own things, and there's even ways, and you want to make sure you have fireproof safes, transporting it. Also, what about, what kind of issues do you run into with shipping? Because I remember I've shipped some, if you want to ship, let's say somebody buys silver in California, you need to ship that silver to you have to insure all of that too as well, right?
Right. So, shipping is really not a big deal. I have the equipment to ship. I have my Better Pack machine, which has the reinforced gummed paper tape that, it feeds water to, which is just very secure tape. Most of my, if it's a very small order, I'll ship a USPS first class parcel, but most of my orders are shipped USPS priority. If it's over $4,000, I'm going, it's over $4,000, I'm going to ship it registered mail. So it's super, super secure. And so it's fully insured by the post office.
Oh, wow.
Yes. That's the only way to actually fully insure precious metals and have the post office insure them. Third-party insurance can cover post office shipments if you have the proper third-party coverage. But if you want the post office specifically to insure precious metals, you have to send it registered mail. If you get the regular blue label insurance, which is, by the way, more expensive than registered mail, I believe, generally, that blue label, if your package is broken into or lost, it's only going to pay you out $25 or $15, even if you paid for $25 in coverage. It does not cover precious metals, and it's very explicit in the not so fine print right on USPS website. Negotiable instruments and gold and silver and things of this sort do need to be shipped registered if you want the post office to cover it. Registered is super secure. It's specially handled. Sometimes it won't move for 2 or 3 days in a post office. It's just in a cage, which just isn't looked at for a minute. But, generally speaking, they don't get lost. They don't get misplaced. And that's a good, safe way to ship stuff. It might take, 5 or 10 days rather than 2 to 3 days. But I've never had a registered package not get to my destination. And it's never taken me more than 10, 11 days for me shipping it out. One package took me 1 or 2 months to receive. I didn't have to pay until receiving it anyway. So I wasn't out the money. It was silver that may have gone down. So I was taking a market risk by not being able to sell it while owning it. But that's like the worst thing I've had with registered. Never had a package lost.
Well, that's one thing too. You don't really, with something like that, you don't necessarily worry about damage. You just worry about it disappearing.
Right.
I remember, I shipped some silver. I shipped some silver either UPS or FedEx, and I said, well, I'll just insure this for X amount of dollars. And it's like, we'll want you to have receipts. I said, well, I'm insuring this for X amount of dollars. If it's lost, you should give me this amount of money because I'm paying for that. I shouldn't have to prove anything to you.
Right.
It's
specifically, I should note that registered mail, you're actually required to declare the full value and not less and not more. So specifically a receipt on that, the receipt that I write up to sell to my customer, that would be, the value that they would want me to declare it to be shipped at, not less and not more.
Well, this was like, silver that you got from somebody, like a present or something like that.
Right.
You didn't really know how much it was worth. You didn't look it up, but, you figured we'll just insure it for this. And if because you're if you insure something that's worth $500 or insure something that's worth $2,000, they're going to charge you more for the insurance. That's the whole point. But, it seems like to me they try to get out of, they were at least trying to get it. Interesting that you had better experiences with registered mail than anything else, but.
Sure. I mean, even regular first class and priority, I don't have issues with. It's very rare that I have an issue. 1 out of every 200 packages, maybe. And in fact, it's probably been over a year since I've opened up an investigation with the post office. And investigations, 95% of the time, get the package moving in 3 days from when you open it. So even that usually does the trick. 1-800-ASK-USPS is the phone number to call to open up an investigation. And One quick thing that I should note, in case anybody's going to be shipping metal to me or to any other coin dealers or to just friends, whatever you're selling to, never put coins or precious metals or gold or silver on the package. If the firm you're sending it to has one of those words, or jewelry for that matter, if they have that word in their name, just abbreviate it with the first letter of that word. So, you know, Taggart Trading doesn't fit that, although it wouldn't be necessarily dumb to initiate TT either, sending a package to me. But certainly, like my uncle, Coin and Jewelry Gallery of Boca Raton, just you know, initial CGOBR, CJGOBR, for example. You know, never put coin or gold or silver on the actual package, not in the address.
That's a very good point. I understand that completely. You've got, you know, Taggart Trading. Makes perfect sense. You know, it's a, you know, gold, silver, metals. Yeah, makes perfect sense that you never do that. Interesting that you've never been to, I guess you haven't used FedEx or UPS, which I find interesting. But anyway, I should
use them. I shouldn't use the post office.
But if it works,
the post office works very well. It's constitutional, but I do oppose its existence. It's not necessary for the stated reasons it would have been necessary, you know, 230 years ago. So the constitutional reason no longer applies. That doesn't make it unconstitutional. It just makes it unnecessary. And I'll be an activist against it when I have an opportunity. But as a business person, I enjoy the marginal subsidy, and it works.
Yeah, and people forget that the post office was actually also used for censorship in the old days. You know, they wouldn't send out mailings for precious metals. Do you ever get a lot of international shipments?
I don't ship internationally. I assume there are plenty of taxes and duties and regulations that I don't know, so I simply don't deal with it. If not one of my straight bullion items, but if one of my art silver or paper money or rare coin items sells on eBay, I do have the option for the eBay's global shipping program. So if one of my buyers is in a country, which is part of the program, and it's in a listing that's in a category that's eligible for the global shipping program, happy to sell it to them that way. Where I ship to Erlanger, Kentucky, and my job is completely done. They open the package, make sure it is what it says in the listing. They repackage it, and they've already collected taxes and fees from the buyer. I don't have to worry about collecting taxes or remitting taxes, and I don't have to worry about regulations as far as what's allowed and what's not. eBay's global shipping program has done that for me already. So that's the only way you're going to get something from me overseas, unless you have an address in America to which I'll ship and then they forward it. But that's the only way, you know, I would get something to somebody overseas.
I assume you. What do you usually accept for payments? Checks, credit cards? Do you accept Bitcoin or other cryptos for payments?
So if I'm at a libertarian event and somebody wants a single ounce of silver, or somebody wants to spend crypto for a single ounce of silver, I will take Bitcoin. I will take, at this point, I guess probably Monero. I would have taken Ethereum probably, at least before the change in how it works. Now it's what, proof of stake rather than proof of work. So I'm probably less enamored with that. I'm the furthest thing you'll find from a crypto expert within the Liberty movement, but you know, I have some very, very basic working knowledge, right? So I don't know. I have some Dash already, and it's already gone way down, so maybe I would take Dash as well, you know, because why not? But anyway, I'm not big on crypto. I have a private wallet. I don't have an exchange wallet, nor do I use BitPay. Because I'm kind of principled in how I use Bitcoin, it's hard for me to get rid of it. You know, there's not really many dealers who would take it at wholesale rates, you know, for silver, for me to replace silver. Therefore, I can't really do anything with it because I need to keep my capital turning. So it needs to be in a form. When I sell stuff, I need to accept it in a form that I have, you know, turn into cash or money in the bank, which again, I could do with BitPay, but then BitPay is a layer on the crypto network, which I'm philosophically against, because to the extent I use Bitcoin, I'm kind of a purist. So it's like a kind of a very silly catch-22. But Anyway, I'm not on an exchange, so I don't have to worry about what happens on Mt. Gox or on FTX or whatever.
Mt. Gox is long gone, but FTX is gone now too. So yeah, but
that's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. So you know what?
Oh, I should say. So I take cash. I'll take checks. If it's a referral from a good person who says it's a good person, I'll probably ship you the metal, within a couple days if it's a check. My policy is people who I don't know, at least in Florida, who have concealed carry permits, I'll take their check as long as I verify their concealed carry permit and their driver's license match, and the driver's license address matches the address on the check. I'll take their check.
Okay, yeah.
If you're not a felon in Florida, if you have a concealed carry permit, and passing a bad check for over a few $100 in Florida is a felony. So, it's a good way to take a risky payment and effectively make the risk zero. And I've never been burned on that. Otherwise, Zelle is wonderful. Zelle has become big in maybe the last 3 years. I love taking Zelle payments. And large transactions, 30 grand or more, I really do want bank wire only. I've made an exception a few times here and there, but it's generally I want bank wire if it's going to be 30K.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't take credit or debit cards.
Okay. Going back 20 years, platinum was almost twice as much as gold, and now gold is twice as much as platinum. What happened?
I don't know exactly what happened. I know it happened when I was starting to be employed in the industry. It may have happened at some points in 2010, 2011, prior to when I started full time, but certainly by the summer of 2011, gold hit 1900. Platinum, I think, did hit 2100. So it may have stayed ahead of gold most of that time or the entire time. But it was sometime between the summer of 2011 and probably spring of 2013 when the metals all crashed. That I think it was during that time when platinum had gone well under gold. And it may have crisscrossed a few times. But by the spring of 2013 and on, I'm fairly certain by then, platinum has been lower than gold.
Yeah.
And that's been the case. As far as, the reasons why, I could only speculate. Certainly gold being effectively a purely monetary metal and responding to, economic actors and speculators' actions based on it being a monetary metal versus platinum, which, yes, they make it into coins and bars, but it's effectively purely an industrial metal. I assume the overwhelming amount of platinum that's mined and refined every year goes into industry like catalytic converters, which has been more palladium the past many years. But the point is industry as opposed to, coins and bars. I assume that the amount of platinum that's refined every year, only a small amount of it goes into coins and bars, as opposed to gold. The overwhelming amount of it goes into coins and bars, and mostly bars into central banks and big institutions, as far as I know.
Well, you hear sometimes about people stealing catalytic converters to get the platinum. You hear about people sometimes taking old motherboards and trying to scrape the gold off of the motherboards.
Sure.
It seems like it'd be a lot of work for not much effort, but who knows?
The higher the value the metals are, the more worth it it'll be, certainly.
Certainly, yeah. So you're definitely into metals, but you're not opposed to cryptocurrency. What's your general impression of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and all these others right now? You also mentioned Monero, and you have some Dash, which is short for digital cash. So,
oh yeah, true. Yeah. I guess I kind of didn't realize that. Yeah, I got Dash at PorkFest in maybe 2017, maybe 2018, the latest. They were giving it a little bit away to everybody, and I want to say, was it Ben Swan was there promoting it? It's like it's more centralized than Bitcoin. I don't know how centralized it is, but I think I could more reliably say, quote, the people from Dash, unquote, were there. Which you can't say that with Bitcoin. It doesn't. I know Bitcoin doesn't work like that. But anyway, and then it went in like halved. But anyway, I love the concept of crypto, especially Bitcoin. I really want to read the white paper, but I understand it to be a Hayekian tour de force of, competing currency and competing information stuff. So I like that. I like the concept of an immutable blockchain that's public and verifiable. And unlike what I assume like Monero and some of these other things where you have to know math in order to verify it, and it's like it's hidden. I don't know, something about it hidden. The fact that Bitcoin is not hidden, I understand, makes it less advantageous for some things, but I think for certain things it's very advantageous to have an open ledger where everybody knows what's going on. And yeah, your wallet can be pseudo anonymous to the extent that you try not to associate with your name with it. But I would say that it's good to have that option for a completely public ledger.
Yes.
I like that concept. I think it's probably good for large transactions. And no doubt there's almost no fee. So for a large international transaction, if you trust the person on the other end, trust them to send the right wallet code and that they're not going to steal the money, that's got to be the best way to transact value, large value internationally than has ever existed.
It's definitely becoming a faster way to send money internationally. Cryptocurrency still has some bugs to work out, but I don't really know very many people in the world of crypto that are opposed to a precious metal standard of money. But they've also realized that you cannot have a gold standard, a silver standard, or whatever, and have a democracy. Because if you have a democracy, you're going to have socialism and you're going to have irresponsible printing of money.
Right. No, fair. Right. 100%, because it can and will be corrupted. Sure. I don't agree with you there. Yes. Which is, one indictment. Well, it's an indictment of democracy, but it's an unfortunate reality of democracy, no doubt. But yeah, democracy sucks for many reasons.
Yeah. So what would you say? What would you say to somebody like Peter Schiff?
So about his huge opposition to crypto, or in general?
his huge opposition to crypto.
I guess I would be more agnostic on the issue, where I'm hopeful, but because he doesn't even suggest that he's hopeful but pessimistic. He says it's a scam pretty much. Yeah. So just because it's not tangible doesn't mean it's a scam. I think by axiomatic definition, it can't be money. So I might agree in some technical sense with Peter Schiff, but that doesn't mean it can't serve as a currency and in a sustainable way over a long period of time. I think the jury is still out on it, but the fact that it's still out there and people are using it, yes, lots of people are using it to speculate, but hopefully this FTX nonsense has shaken out some of the speculators. And I'm not against speculators per se, but to the extent that speculation, gins it up, it'll make it less accessible to some people who would want to use it for why it should be used, or for the why it was created, I should say.
Let's keep in mind too. You're not forced to buy a full Bitcoin. I mean, you can go buy 1/1,000,000th of a Bitcoin.
Right, but it's still harder to buy it at 60 grand than it is to 15 grand, because you're still buying more Satoshis if you're spending X dollars at 15 grand rather than X dollars at 60 grand. So knowing that it can go down when it's super high is one thing that would keep a smaller guy from getting into it. Conversely, because of psychology, it brings in a lot of people. So I get that.
Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting experience right now. I don't know if crypto has already lasted longer than a lot of other attempts, though. So I think it's going to stick around longer, but it's hard to say really. Also, what do you say? I can remember an episode of Donahue from 1980 around election day where Doug Casey's on it. And Doug Casey says on it that gold is going to $3,200 an ounce. Gold has still never went to $3,200 an ounce. If you'd bought gold in 1980 and had that gold 20 years later, you would have lost money. Do you think that maybe gold is kind of a fetish for some libertarians and that it's not? Because it seems like the gold bugs and libertarians have always been saying that gold is going to the moon.
You could be right in describing it as a fetish. I think that it's wanting to, have something that they can't control. So I appreciate wanting to own it from an independent standpoint. I think it would make a very sound money As far as being a decision to make for your personal portfolio, however, I think there is something to be said about it having been served unduly as a fetish among libertarians for many decades. I think that everybody who has some money and no debt should own a little bit of physical gold and silver. But you know, I think people have gotten way overboard. I have lots of clients and lots of friends who are not super wealthy, but have the little that they have in metals, and then when they need money, they got to sell it. And physical metals have a much higher spread than most financial assets. They have a lower spread than any other physical asset, but a much higher spread than stocks and bonds, and then say SLV and GLD, the ETFs that track the gold and silver prices. So they're paying a massive insurance premium for having all their stuff in physical. And when an emergency or a marginal emergency inevitably comes up, they got to sell what they just bought. And even if gold is up a little bit, the spread, you know, ate up that gain, and they're still down a couple percent, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You have that.
Definitely. So even if my libertarian friends want to buy a lot of metal, I do suggest that what I would do if I were in your situation, have at least some green and blue pieces of paper and have some money in the bank, so that if an unexpected expense comes up, you don't have to liquidate your metal and pay a transactions cost to do it. Because I think that that's one thing that has kept some libertarians down. Now, my friends who I'm talking about, in fact, for the most part, very few of them are in the liberty movement, and they may have voted for some libertarians here and there, but they're certainly like-minded in general. So, but yeah, I just don't want to see people lose money. So keep what you can afford to lose. What you can afford to lose among that money includes some metals, maybe. But I certainly wouldn't give all that money in metals.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of that though. You know, but when you buy and sell stocks on Ameritrade, you basically, I mean, you pay the transaction fee, but that's it. But with gold, I don't know, you probably sell it to the dealer at what, 10% less than retail or something like that? Or
no, it's the spreads aren't that big. Not in 1 ounce coins anyway. So, for example, right now, and premiums have come way down, have come decently down the past few weeks, and differences in premiums have come way down. But say I have a customer, he wants a single foreign 1 ounce bullion coin, so such as a South African Krugerrand, a Canadian maple, Australian kangaroo, just to name 3 of many examples. For single coin, depending on what it is, foreign, I would sell it at spot plus 95 or spot plus $90, right? And I would be a buyer right now at spot. So that's a $90 spread, 90 on 18 on 1900. So that's less than 5%.
Okay.
1920. So that might be it's 4 point something percent, right? Is my ask minus my bid.
Yeah.
Now, to the extent that now, whenever I have stuff coming in, you know, that I'm paying spot for, I'm going to sell it for less than spot plus 90. I am going to discount it because I want to move it. I'm not trying to stock gold. So, you know, I did sell some recently at plus 55 and plus 60. So you're not always going to have that 4.5% spread, but it can be as high as that, and sometimes even higher. This is very average where we are right now, I would say. When you get the fractional stuff, especially the modern 10th ounce, modern quarter ounce, modern half ounce, that stuff is going to be a higher spread. So even if my price is hyper competitive, I might be at, you know, a 19 or 20% premium on 10th ounce American Eagles, and the websites might be at a 40% or 45% premium, which is, excuse my language, batshit crazy. But they're able to get it and they're selling it. In spite of the fact that my premium is way, way, way lower, it's still not going to necessarily be a good deal for you if you think you're going to need to sell it in a few months, because I might be working on a 10 or 12 point spread on foreign, on modern 10th ounce, for example, between my ask and my bid. I'm only going to make three or 4 points over wholesale ask at most, but I might have to buy it low enough under wholesale ask and under wholesale bid, even depending on the nature of the market.
Yeah, that's been interesting. So where do you think the future of metals is right now? I mean, do you think, does anybody use gold or silver as a currency anywhere right now?
no countries or governments, far as I know.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to include this in my precious metals presentation, which I've been working on as part of the Tom Woods School of Life. One of my accountability tasks has been to clean up my presentation and really professionalize it, specifically to give a presentation to the Tom Woods School of Life. But I've done the presentation many times at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, at one or two Libertarian Party events, conventions, a precious metals investment seminar, the basics on what there is out there and how to go about buying it. So the very beginning of my presentation, this wasn't part of my old presentation, this is something that I've just put in, the past couple months, is a video of Dave Ramsey, who I can appreciate, by the way, on personal finance, not on macroeconomics, and I'd appreciate Peter Schiff on macro.
Yeah.
It's a video of Dave Ramsey saying, after an economic collapse, nobody anywhere has ever used gold, ever. Right. And he said this sometime, maybe 2016, 2018, I don't know. Meanwhile, just in 2009 in Zimbabwe, they were using gold for a few months. They did dollarize. They did go to the US dollar at some point within a few months. But there's videos on YouTube showing this, so that they're panning for gold every day and mining gold. And people are absolutely trading gold for bread. So Dave Ramsey is just flat out wrong. I'm sorry. What was the question that I was answering? I'm so sorry.
Where do they use gold? You mentioned they use gold in Zimbabwe. Yeah, Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is basically his niche is helping people who have been very bad with money and been very bad with credit cards and gotten into debt. He's there to help people get out of debt. That's what he's there for. He's not there to tell people how to get rich. He's not there to tell people how to, maximize their income. He's just, I think that's his niche.
I think
he's not an economist, but
he's not an economist. He's absolutely not. He said a couple smart things on the economy, but he said many things that demonstrates he's not an economist.
But it sounds like he does work for what he's set up for, which is helping people get
not only getting people out of debt,
debt,
but I would bet that he's probably correct about the most reliable and sustainable way to become a millionaire. Not a billionaire, but a millionaire, an everyday millionaire, and how to maintain financial peace. He's probably right about that.
What's that?
Zero business debt, pay off all your debt except for your mortgage, and then pay that off, diligently.
Yeah.
But pay cash for every business investment and have no interest payments because have no debt payments because the interest eats up profit and introduces risk, which reduces peace in your life. So that doesn't mean everybody needs to do what he says, but I do think that he's probably right about anyway, as far as business investments, but also he's probably right about broad-based index funds. He specifically likes mutual funds. He claims there's these mutual funds. He claims that there's these mutual funds that after fees reliably pay more than 10% every year, return that. I'm kind of skeptical, but he insists it with all of his life. So, and I find him trustworthy on personal finance. So if these mutual funds exist, I'm all for it and believe that that is the best way to, use your income to enhance your income to become a millionaire, by reinvesting growth.
This is not financial advice. This is not tax advice. This is not legal advice. Anyway,
of course not.
So,
this is my opinion. I don't do this program either. I'm building my business. I'm reinvesting everything I have into my business. But if I were a teacher and I wanted to become a millionaire, I would probably be doing his baby steps.
Yeah. So you've been in favor of free markets and you're still libertarian. You've also been involved with the Libertarian Party and you've run for office. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I went to my first Libertarian Party meeting. It would have been, I was thinking it was late 2012, and I kind of still think that's maybe it was late 2013. But either way, Professor Thomas DiLorenzo was speaking with the Palm Beach Libertarian Party, he made a post about it in Lou Rockwell, which I was still checking back then. I check pretty much nowhere these days, and I don't check LouRockwell.com anymore, unfortunately. But it was one of his blog posts. He said he was going to be at Rotelli in downtown Lake Worth, and to email Chris Carmichael, the current secretary, and to sign up. And emailed her as soon as I saw this. And said, yes, we have space for you. So I came. It was lots of fun. I met lots of great people, and a couple friends I may have met there. It may have been their first meeting as well. But Bill Sadler, who passed away a couple of years ago, he was at that meeting, probably running it, and lots of people who I became friends with over the years were there. And then it was just like 3 months after that, something like that, December 12 or 13 or January 13 or 14. I guess it was 12 to 13. Yeah, I became secretary. They asked me to do it. And I'd only been to a couple meetings. And I said, okay, fine, whatever. And then a year into serving as secretary of the LP Palm Beach, I guess it was John Sodelaire was moving to New Jersey to kick ass in his business. It may have been him. Yeah, I think he had been chair for a year, and they asked me to be chair for the next year. So I fell on that grenade, and it was fine. But it was a lot of fun in 2014 because we had Adrian Wiley running for governor, which is what got me involved in the state party and meeting people outside of Palm Beach. So it was a hugely fun campaign. I only volunteered at like maybe 4 of his events, but I had a lot of fun doing it. And he really represented libertarianism and the Libertarian Party of Florida wonderfully. He was a very professional candidate, really good, and brought all of us together. And he was great for the liberty community in Florida. So that's what got me involved initially. I ran for Palm Beach Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Supervisors back. It was in 2014, actually. So I won unopposed. So I served 2015, 16, 17, and 18. And without scandal and without craziness. So without scandal, I say, because there was another one of the supervisors who actually had to resign. She had won the term 2 years after I won. So our terms were overlapping. But a few months after she ran, she said some very bizarrely disparaging remarks against a veteran on Facebook. And she resigned in disgrace after the Palm Beach Post or whatever picked it up. And I'm not, I don't worship veterans, but I found what she said to have been quite bizarre.
Yeah.
Yes.
So did you just get tired of this, or were you opposed and lost?
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to say, it did become competitive after I won. And we had another guy who apparently was a libertarian, but I'd never met him, who won but never showed up. And we deposed him. We asked the governor to depose him a few months after him not showing up. That was done. But yeah, it became competitive 2 years later. My friend Matt Bymaster did actually win. So it was me and him serving for my final 2 years. But after that, I was just tired of it. I wasn't afraid of the competition per se. It was, I didn't want to do the work.
Yes.
But I, even if it wasn't going to be a competitive race, I just didn't want to serve again. I was tired. And, going to something that Jordan Peterson had talked about a few years ago, and I certainly hadn't heard of him prior to 2014, but it would have been, I guess, 2016, 2017 maybe. But as far as cleaning your room and, fixing your own mess before going out and trying to change the world, that's probably a really good idea. And not that I regret anything I did, but I was certainly very ineffective. And I think it would have been much better use of my time and effort and society's time and effort and capital if I hadn't served then, and if I had focused on building my business and cleaning up my own space, my physical living space, which I didn't do until a year ago. I was finishing up that process.
You were unopposed. How much did you have to spend on campaigning for this?
I didn't spend anything on the campaign. I didn't open up a campaign account. If I appointed a treasurer, it would have been me, but I didn't form any committee. I don't remember what the law was. I just built the basics, and I had to pay, out of my own pocket, maybe it was a $50 filing fee, something like that, or qualification fee, and that was really it.
That's good.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you have any opportunities really to make a difference on this position? Or?
Very good question. Yes, I had opportunities, and because my life was, very messy, I didn't really take advantage of those opportunities. The very end of my term, the final few months, I did introduce a few sense of the board resolutions that nobody would have cared about, but it's something I could have promoted, and maybe some of them would have made news because they would have been weird. I'll get into that in a second, but had I been more diligent earlier on, I probably would have done a lot more of these and tried to actually make them a bigger deal and turn them into something. So for one example, one of the resolutions that I introduced was a resolution of our board opposing municipalities fluoridating their water and recommending against the practice, right? We have no binding authority. We have no regulatory authority, but it's a government body giving a recommendation, right? So it has some legitimacy to somewhere out there, to the extent that anybody would hear about it, right? So most people probably wouldn't care. But I did introduce this resolution and did some basic research, whereas it's an industrial byproduct that industry is, getting paid to dispose of rather than having to pay to dispose of. They didn't like that. Whereas another line of mine was, whereas the, Nuremberg code prohibits forced medication, and this, to the extent you want public drinking water, it's essentially, forcing a medication on you. I made a lot of other points, whereas, all this evidence doesn't actually demonstrate that it helps your teeth at all. Ingesting fluoride, different about brushing your teeth, but ingesting fluoride, there's no evidence that it helps your teeth, whereas there is evidence that it hurts certain, parts of the brain and maybe the pineal gland or something like that, and it bioaccumulates. Whereas all these different points, therefore be resolved that our district board recommends, against continuing to fluoridate water supplies. And my buddy Matt voted with me, and the 2 or 3 others on the board voted against, of course, so it lost. And one of the opposing members actually said, this is an honest paraphrase, it's close to an exact quote, because this issue is associated with conspiracy theorists, therefore we shouldn't talk about it on this district board because we are politicizing the board. That's what I was told, right? So nothing about the content and the facts of whether it's right or necessary. Just that conspiracy theorists talk about it, therefore we shouldn't. Meanwhile, their things, the resolutions they had proposed, one of them was recommending the county go through with a land purchase that it was already planning on doing and was probably going to happen anyway. That, again, nobody would care about our opinion. Like, that wasn't political. I don't. Yes. It's only political if they don't want it, of course. But
yes, the conspiracy theorists. Yes, did you?
Yeah.
So you don't believe in conspiracies. So did you think it was real when Hulk Hogan body slammed Andre the Giant?
I don't know wrestling. Wrestling is fake.
Yeah, that's my point. It's fake.
But these people are amazing athletes, nonetheless.
Yeah, but my point, that's my point, is that it's fake. That's what I asked him. Do you think this stuff is real? I mean, no, because Hulk Hogan did said you don't body slam Andre the Giant unless he helps you. That's what he. I mean, 7'4" over 500 pounds. That's the whole point. But yes.
Right.
Anyway,
so yeah, it's a learning experience. I should mention one other. I made a few other resolutions, but one of the other ones was recommending that the federal government abolish the flood insurance program. And I just remember one of the opposed. Of course, my friend Matt voted with me, and the other 2 or 3, whoever was on the board, voted against, of course. And one of them said, "Oh well, the flood insurance program, it gives super reasonable rates." Like. That if she had listened to the reasoning, the intro that I gave, my reasoning for this, well, that's the whole point. They're artificially too reasonable. It's because there's no risk management, no risk measurement. That's my whole point. So it's just very funny. The economic ignorance and also not caring about economic reality and just caring about feelings and intentions. That's the types of people who were mostly running for these positions and mostly staffing the employment of these districts to the extent that there were any employees.
So so you've also been involved with the Libertarian Party then. So you've had some positions there. Have you been to national, been to Florida convention and stuff like that? Tell me about that.
Started going to LPF conventions in 2015, and I've been there every year. I started in 2016 as a vendor, which was the first year I had been in business on my own as well. And the convention and Pork Fest, both of those I started in 2015, year before starting my own business.
Yeah, and, do you go to Pork Fest? You go to LP? I think you said you went to LP National as well. You don't go to Freedom Fest, or?
Been to Freedom Fest once in 2021.
Yeah,
it would have been when it was.
That was South Dakota, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I wish they'd stayed there. That would have been. I mean, they should have just stayed there forever. I think that was funny. I would think that was great that they went south. But I should ask you. Do you know Keith Weiner, Monetary Metals?
I don't know him by name.
You know who I'm talking about?
Monetary Metals. I've probably seen the website before.
He runs a system where you can loan your gold to him, and he'll actually loan gold, because there are people who rent gold or they'll borrow gold like they need for an industrial use or something like that, and you actually get paid interest on your gold, and you get paid your interest on your gold in gold as well. He's another guy who's very much gold. Well, I know he's very, very anti-crypto though, but he's more of an objectivist though too. I assume Taggart Trading. That's a reference to Dagny Taggart or Jim Taggart or Taggart.
Of course, Dagny. I had seen the 3 movies, and he was my fictional. She was really my fictional hero because of the 3 movies. And I'd read Anthem maybe in college or right after college. And, having been in the Liberty sphere, I had seen all this about Rand, so I loved that I got to see the movies in theater. Glad they were done in spite of the different cast and all the various frustrations. I know, but it was made anyway. I was so inspired by her as a character, her opposing her brother and opposing how everything was going, and also being the last person, the final person to drop out, fighting the good fight as long as she had to. I had such respect for her that's how I started my business. And I couldn't name it like it could be Reardon Trading. Like, I love Hank Reardon as well, but Reardon Trading, it's not alliterative. And I wasn't
alliteration. Yes, it's so powerful.
Exactly. And I wasn't going to name it Reardon Metals because I didn't want to literally
Reardon Metals. Yes.
I might be sued by the Ayn Rand Institute or something for intellectual property, but also in principle, I don't want to rip off rip that off. So Taggart Trading, I settled on that, and I don't consider it really settling. I'm very proud of it. And maybe Midas Mulligan Trading. It could have been Mulligan Trading or Mulligan Resources or something like that. So there were potential names, but I'm very happy.
Metals, Mulligan Stew,
And when people see my logo with Atlas holding up a gold coin, and then they see Taggart Trading, they understand the reference instantly. So
that's there's a lot of people that make references like that. I don't think they can't put they can't put intellectual property on just a name like Taggart, although it's fairly obvious a reference. I don't think.
Correct.
If you did Dagny Taggart Trading, I bet they might give you some issues, but
Right. I'm certainly not ripping anything off. It's an homage to Rand.
It's an homage, So you've been part of LP Florida, and you go to some of these. That probably works out pretty well for you. You get to invite in some of these groups. You're not that involved though, so you're just tabling.
I've been in fact, in 2016 at the national convention, I wasn't a vendor. And I don't think I had signed up to be a delegate prior to the convention, but of course I got a delegate seat. And until it got super crazy with the Mises Caucus against, the batshit crazy, insane social justice warriors and the Sarwark sympathizers, until it got that crazy, it was always very easy to get a seat at a delegation seat at the national convention, even if you just showed up.
2016
Go ahead.
2016 with where?
Oh, Orlando.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. Orlando, yeah, 2016 Orlando, 2018 New Orleans, 2020 was supposed to be in Austin, got hybrid, moved back to Orlando, 2022 Reno.
Yes.
2024 is DC. I don't know why. I think they're still thinking about 2026.
Right. So DC apparently will probably not be changed. I've followed up with Angela more recently. I think maybe a couple months after the convention, I may have messaged Angela or maybe I saw her at an event or something, and she said, no, it's not looking like it's going to be able to be changed.
Why? They can't possibly change it without many problems coming up. You can't just change convention sites at the
right. It's just that many people were against it, including me. And in fact, the one piece of credit I will give to somebody who I wanted to give a chance to, but he demonstrated himself to be a scumbag. But our former chair, who was only chair for a few months, what was his name?
Yes,
lawyer, tax lawyer. What's that?
Yes. Joe Bishop Henchman.
Joe Bishop Henchman. Thank you. What a name, Henchman, right?
Yeah, his name was Joe Bishop. His other partner, I believe, was named Henchman, so it became Bishop Henchman.
Okay. Joe Bishop Henchman. What was I going to say about him? He actually voted against DC as the location, and he was the only EC member to actually respond to me before the vote when I had blasted the EC saying I opposed this, and he said yes. Keeping in mind your objection and many others, I'm voting against it. So I'll give him one small pice of credit. All his other scumbaggery.
I know very little about him, so I won't say that. I don't know what makes these people think you can just sign all these contracts and then void them just because you changed your mind. It doesn't work that way. I mean,
anyway,
I don't like the site either, but I also understand contracts have been signed. You're going to
right. So I'm not going to go.
Penalties are.
I should say I'm not going to go, except now that we have the Supreme Court decision about carrying, we'll have to, I guess, wait and see to what extent DC changes their carry laws.
Yes, that might be interesting, yeah. If
they have a concealed carry permit and somehow magically becomes reciprocal, or you're able as a non-resident to get a concealed carry permit, then I would consider that, right? But I'm not going to be in DC disarmed. That's which means I'm not going to be in DC.
Yeah,
so I wouldn't go to an LP convention unarmed. That's just not happening.
I wonder how that will impact attendance. So you were in. So what's been your impression of what's happened with the LP in the last since say Orlando and now?
I'm very impressed with the Mises Caucus growth, and I was blown away by the. I was only in Reno for a short time. I had to get to a friend's wedding, so I didn't even try to become a delegate. But I had only attended a couple of the LPF Mises Caucus delegation meetings, months and months and months prior, well before the state party convention. And so at the state party convention, I was amazed at how well organized it was. Yet what I witnessed wasn't cultish, by the way. For example, we did have a slate of candidates in 2021, or was it 22? Slate of candidates, and every single person won, except for in the LPF, we have I think it's the rules committee that we have elections for. And the only person who didn't win was the one Mises Caucus endorsed person who nobody knew, right? So I actually appreciated that we weren't, and the other candidates were good people. They're not explicitly Mises Caucus, but they're all known entities in the LPF and reliable people. So the point is the LP Mises Caucus members in Florida didn't just blindly vote for the slate and had enough experience to know, enough institutional knowledge to know that if we're going to vote for somebody who we don't know versus people who we know to be good, even though not explicitly on our side, that creates a lot of risks. So I appreciate that even though outsiders might perceive a lot of cultishness in the LPMC, I know it's not a cult. And I was only in a couple of the meetings, but I understand there was a lot of internal debate, whether to run against DeSantis, for example. So there's a lot of contentious issues within the LP Mises Caucus, which since they're all legitimate issues that you can have different sides on, it's not contentious to the extent where people get hurt over it. It's, you know, it's a strategy. It's, you know, debates and contention on strategy, which is really good. But I love that how Angela and she won with what, 69 or 70% of the vote. I thought that was amazing. And I wish I was there the whole time. I enjoyed my friend's wedding very much and glad we had it. But I can't wait to get to the next convention in 26, assuming I won't be there in 24 for DC.
I should ask you earlier, what's been your general impression of PorcFest and the Free State Project?
I'm a fellow traveler and a supporter. I would never move to New Hampshire in spite of their halfway beratement of you to do so, because I like Florida too much with the weather. And between New Hampshire and Florida, those are number 1 and 2, not necessarily in that order. It changes all the time as far as various economic freedom indexes. So they have some social freedom there that we don't have here. But there's plenty of economic freedom in both places, such as state income tax, for example. And we have very, very low homestead property tax for your primary home. Your property tax is very, very low. And, you know, again, social freedoms, we're required to wear a seatbelt. We're required to have a concealed carry permit. We don't have open carry. So don't get me wrong. There's plenty of stuff that could be a lot better about Florida. I love Free State Project, PorcFest. I've attended every year since 2015. It's great for me as a vendor. Actually, at these events, I do very, very little business, like at the Libertarian Party of Florida and the LP National conventions. It's laughable how little business I actually do at the events. It took me time to grow, and I did get clients eventually. And now I do plenty of business with LP people, you know, through the mail and whatnot. PorcFest, after my first 2 years, like my 3rd year as a vendor and on, it's been very good. I make last year, I think, was decently off this past summer, but generally it's more than a paid vacation. I'm actually making money doing it.
Okay. Yeah.
That is in addition to the business I got from PorcFest clients in between PorcFests. I do great, you know, during the year with my clients who I've picked up from there. Yeah.
I mean, certainly, considering the events of 2020, how did that impact the LP? And I mean, while DeSantis wasn't quite on the level of Kristi Noem, he's certainly in the top 5 governors as far as COVID goes. I think he was very late to embrace this stuff, and then he quickly realized he'd made a mistake. And now he's doing a lot, really, I think, to redeem himself. What's your opinion of that? And who I mean, I've often described these people as the Fauci caucus. I wish I'd made up that term back in 2020. What happened? I'm still trying to figure out what happened to the libertarian movement in 2020, because I saw a few people sell out after the World Trade Center, but I could not believe the amount of people who either sold out or just left after this.
Yeah. So fortunately, there's plenty of people in Florida who would have supported for various leadership positions in the past, people who became members of the Fauci caucus, but there was nobody in Florida who I know of who was at all supportive of or sympathetic to any of these restrictions. I know a couple of them who, wanted to wear masks themselves going to events because they do jobs and they thought they were going to spread something, whatever. So it was their perception of taking personal responsibility. But the one that I'm thinking of, he never berated anybody, and he never would have said to me that I should put on a mask, right? So my point is, this is like the worst of it, which is not bad at all. So out of the people in Florida, regardless of whether they had supported SAR-WARC in 2018 or, even in 2020 for that matter, regardless of flavors of the party that they identified with, they were all like, I know a lot of friends who went to the rallies in Fort Lauderdale and Miami and up here, and from all over the Liberty, from, many different literally from different caucuses and different cliques. And we were all advocating for things to open up and against mask mandates and against vaccine mandates and all of that. So fortunately, we didn't have the Fauci caucus in Florida.
Yeah, it seems like it was more maybe some of the more think tankers and some like that than the party. But I mean, Penn Jillette is really high on the list of people who disappointed me. But there were others. Do you think that the fact that Florida has a lot of immigrants from Cuba and Venezuela, is that making it more favorable to free markets there?
I would bet, although just being favorable to free markets in general, I don't know would stop people from freaking out during a pandemic, during the government, during what the government is presenting as a pandemic. But I think a lot of people from both of those places would be able to probably identify the propaganda and identify that it's fake, whether they support free markets or welfare. Because I understand plenty of Cubans, as Republican and as conservative as they present themselves, they're very for Social Security and lots of welfare programs. But at least I don't think they're for killing the goose that lays the golden egg. I think they're very against nationalization, government taking over economics. But I think a lot of them would be able to identify the propaganda. So to that extent, they probably did, at least on the margins, help us stay freer than we otherwise would have been. And look, I don't know how many Venezuelans are coming into Miami. I know there's not only lots of Cubans, but lots of different Hispanics in general. But Miami-Dade, they voted for DeSantis. DeSantis won Miami County. Yeah,
it's very interesting to see what's happening there. I think it's largely just because you end up with this large population of Spanish speakers. I mean, because I think Miami has also very much become the center of a lot of Spanish-speaking movies and stuff like that.
I'm not so up on my culture, so I couldn't tell
you.
And
and not to mention, the other thing that's interesting about Miami, it's gotten so expensive, but they moved the Bitcoin conference there. It seems like Miami's really going after that. I'm calling it the Silicon Swamp.
Yes,
they moved the big Bitcoin conference to Miami Beach, and that's certainly an event worth.
I guess there was one Bitcoin conference. I think it was late May, early June last summer, and I wasn't able to be there because I was away. I was out of state. And then there was another one, which was maybe later on, maybe later in the last year that in 2021, maybe I couldn't get to. I was maybe at a gun show or something. So they always seem to overlap with events that I have somewhere.
The big Bitcoin conference.
The
big Bitcoin conference in Miami was actually in early April, which unfortunately partially overlapped with LP Texas. And I left early to go to that. But that was when it was. It was very interesting. And volunteering at some conferences do have their advantages. One advantage was I got parking at the Miami Beach Convention Center. That was a nice perk to have, although I was staying in an Airbnb that was way out because Miami Beach is not cheap. And of course, you also have to go through the hassle of driving off the island, back on the island, that kind of thing. That was my first time in Miami, and it was definitely something interesting to see. It's not, as people point out, it's not really like that's really not like the South at all. The only place that's really like the South, I guess, is the Panhandle, as they call it, Floribama, I believe.
Right. The Panhandle is definitely very south. Even Central Florida, like in the middle of the state, south of Orlando, as well as north of Orlando. A lot of that is very southern as well. But certainly the coasts, the South Florida, and then you have the Treasure Coast, and then the Spaced Coast. Not particularly south, I would say.
And obviously, people also tell me too that when there's a hurricane, DeSantis is really on top of stuff. I mean that's one thing that you gotta give him credit for. That's what I've heard. I mean,
to the extent that the state has taken leadership on managing the aftermath of hurricanes, as the state owns roads and bridges and whatnot, my perception is that he's done a fine job. I assume it helps that they have boatloads of money to spend. That said, they have the boatloads of money because they've been relatively fiscally responsible, and combined with the tyranny elsewhere drives more people to Florida. Plus, over the decades, the weather and the beautifulness drives people to Florida. So they have a lot of things going for them in Tallahassee, where simply because there's so much money, that if they have any competence whatsoever, they can get some shit done. Such as him fixing a bridge. He fixed some bridge, in a few days or whatever. And I guess we're fortunate enough to have all that money. And he has done some gas taxes and some tax holidays here and there through the state. So I do give them some credit. I think Rick Scott had done a little bit of that. I wouldn't trust Rick Scott at all ever to do anything good. But he did, a tiny bit of good here and there among his lots of bad. Yeah. But it helps that the Republican Party of Florida has not killed the goose that lays the golden egg, and they are encouraging of business, so they can afford a lot of very corrupt spending, but also spending that is necessary and needed quick.
Yeah, well, when there's a hurricane, if a bridge goes down, people don't really care how much it costs. They just want that bridge back up.
Right.
And that's the thing, the cliche, when so it's, it's just like I remember when I lived in Columbus, Ohio, and it's like they never wear the snow plows, get out there. It's, but you don't worry about the snow plows, but that's what you do have to worry about. Florida. Do you think is it DeSantis, or do you think it might be more the state legislature? I mean, is it a pretty good culture there overall? I mean,
the fiscal conservative culture is the state legislature, no doubt. That there's enough. I don't know if it's Republicans just trying to stick it to Democrats, or if they actually do have some belief in fiscal restraint. I don't know, but they do. No doubt, they have tons coming in, so they do spend way more than they should. And as I said, there's lots of corrupt spending. But like state employees generally don't get lavish wages nor lavish pensions. So
that's huge.
In general, right? As opposed to New Jersey, New York, California, I assumed since I was a kid, even well before I was a libertarian, it just sounded extremely unsustainable.
Oh yeah,
that state workers get with their retirements. So I don't see that here. So that's a positive good that we have going for us.
Do you think the people from New York and Pennsylvania and wherever else they're moving from are going to ruin Florida the same way the Californians have ruined Texas?
I hope not. Just one small piece of evidence. This is well before DeSantis, well before, C-19. Since I've been down here in 2011, I've met several people, for example, like New York Jews, just like I am. Well, I'm from Jersey, but the point is Jewish people who moved down from the Northeast, who now they're in Florida, and they were never a gun owner, and now they're a gun owner, right? That's just one example.
Wow.
People, kind of change their own perceptions are changed just based on being around other people and being among a different culture. So there's still plenty of Palm Beach liberal Jews who are anti-gun. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, well, but then maybe not just. They don't have to be, of a certain ethnic group. I mean, they could be other people.
Of course. But I'm speaking for my own because I'm Jewish. Yeah. And yes, there are synagogues here that have metal detectors that do prohibit you carrying, but there are some that don't. And there are some that when you get to know some of them, some of the regular attendees, that you find out that they're actually through back channels encouraged to carry. So
I can't imagine going to church or going wherever and having to go through a metal detector. It's just that's so wild. I mean,
there's one synagogue I don't go to. My dad likes to go to it when he comes down because it's very similar to our shul up north, but I won't go to it because there's a metal detector and maybe there's 2 uniform security. And I hope that there's lots of, non-uniformed and undercover, but I fear that there's no other security other than 2, uniformed people. And that I'm not going to leave my life up to them.
Well, there's always been that belief, it's God's house. It's supposed to be kept open. I grew up in places, where they wouldn't even lock the churches.
Right. You need to take responsibility for your own defense because just because God doesn't mean he's going to necessarily prevent bad things from happening. But you shouldn't be preventing good people from protecting everybody. No doubt.
But there's always that, but even some of the, even you wouldn't, you wouldn't even expect the mafia to do a shootout in the church. I mean, even they say, well, we have to respect the church. Even there's even the honor among criminals, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So something that really, I would say, maybe left a little mark on me. So I don't generally attend synagogue on Saturday. It's been years since I've gone to a regular Saturday morning Shabbat service. But one of the last couple that I went with my dad when he was down here. We went to one of the, it's an ultra-Orthodox sect who's very welcoming. It's the Chabad people. They're, I'm not wearing a yarmulke, and I don't keep kosher, but unlike many of the ultra-Orthodox, they love me to come to their services and participate in their, holiday celebrations and whatnot. I'm invited to some of their houses sometimes. Anyway, I was at one of the Chabad synagogues, and this was the last Saturday or second to last Saturday morning service I went to a few years ago. It was the totally bizarre coincidence. It was the same Saturday when there was the shooting at the Pittsburgh synagogue. For that to have happened bizarrely, and I go once every 4 years, and that was the same Saturday, you can understand why I'm a little bit more guarded than I otherwise would.
Yeah. That's very interesting. It's interesting getting back to COVID restrictions, because I can remember an incident in which our Travis County here in Austin agreed to go to this event called the Constitutional Rights Summit. And then our chair saw people who weren't wearing masks, and he decided to pull out of the event. And it was after that event that I fully got behind Angela McArdle, because of all the protests and stuff that she's been organizing. I consider Angela a friend, and I'm glad I was able to support her. And it raises one question that I've asked everybody who's been involved with the LP on this podcast. What do the people who hate the Mises Caucus really want? What do you think they want?
I guess a lot of them want to perceive themselves as being considered respectable by people who hate all of our guts, which is bizarre.
Yeah,
that's some of the people, no doubt.
Yeah,
I think it's possible that some of them are just super jealous of our movement because Michael Heiss. I mean, yes, he had worked in the Liberty movement. He worked for Adam versus the Man. And he did the End the Fed rallies in Philadelphia when I was in college, just a little north of him. But he became super big by starting the Mises Caucus. Meanwhile, Tom Woods, who's one of our main sort of figureheads, he's a self-made academic, and yes, he Mises Institute, and he did this and that, but he's done very well for himself, right, as an entrepreneur. And it just some of these people are, I guess I got to say, low status males who don't know how to produce and don't want to produce and are jealous of other people's productivity. Probably.
Well, I can think of one hater of the Mises Caucus who's certainly who's certainly done very well as a doctor who lives in the state of Washington. I won't mention his name, but. I think there's definitely.
Was he a big donor? Was he a self-proclaimed?
Yes, he's a big donor. I'm pretty sure he's a big donor. I'm not mentioning names here, but I do think there is a concern that the LP is going to turn into something, be taken over by, say, somebody like Gary North, who, while he was very good on Austrian economics, was not good on issues of personal liberty. There's always been a certain category of, and I do say, free market advocates they know the Austrian school, they're all good on Austrian economics, they believe in the gold standard, but then they might want to say outlaw prostitution, or Gary wanted to execute gays.
Sure. Given that the Mises Caucus has taken over pretty convincingly, Mises Caucus is really into Austrian economics, anti-war, but also things like anti-drug war, anti-civil asset forfeiture. We're very pro-specific civil liberties in general.
Yeah.
So I think to the extent that anybody fears that fear is unfounded.
Yeah.
It's like Gary North is one of how many senior fellows at the Mises Institute are there? Like 50 or something?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's what I'm
Walter Block. Walter Block is super pro civil liberties, and so I don't really, I don't get why people would think that we're going to be supporting. I don't get how people think we're Pinochet, right? I don't see that.
I don't know if that, I don't see that happening either. It's
like at the worst,
we're more tolerant. And the Mises Caucus certainly has gay people. It has at least one person who's transgender. It's probably done more to bring. And the Mises Caucus is actually less white by percentage than some of these other ones. So they're certainly doing better than that. And it seems like the Mises Caucus might actually even seems like they might even have more women, but I can't say. I don't really know. The percentage of women has been bad no matter where you go, as far as I'm concerned.
I think you're probably right on everything you just said, though. And what I wanted to suggest was, I think overall we're more tolerant, not only reflected by what you said, but we're also going to be more tolerant of people with a socially conservative mindset as well. If they're not a libertarian on the policy issues, I don't think we're going to really want them to have leadership positions. But we're not going to excoriate people who have sensitivities, who might want a society that manifests itself in more of a socially conservative way, regardless of policy.
But
so just the fact that we don't call those people bigots makes some of these, anti-Mises people hate us, or just gives them another reason to say, oh, we associate with hateful people, which no, we don't.
Well, Dave Smith did do that debate with Nick Fuentes, although I could also call out Tyler Cowen for doing a podcast with Sam Bankman-Fried, so.
I did not know that. All I know is Tyler Cowen, the Marginal Revolution.
Yes, Tyler Cowen, the guy who seems to be what you'd call the court libertarian for the establishment.
I may have heard that.
Even though he's not a libertarian at all, as far as I'm concerned.
Back when I first learned about Marginal Revolution and Cafe Hayek, when I interned at IHS, I didn't get the impression that he wasn't a libertarian, but I haven't followed him since shortly after that. So
the media like to identify some of these people as libertarians just because they don't scare them and they don't even want to give them attention. To their credit, too, I do think the Mises Caucus did very well to embrace the podcast sphere. If the opponents of the Mises Caucus, I want the opponents of the Mises Caucus to be better. I do, because everybody gets better if we're all better and if the competition is better. But that's one thing they ought to go do, is start a podcast. Sar works very articulately. He's got a great voice. He should start a podcast. Some of these other people could do podcasts. I don't.
Sarwark could actually spread liberty by he could talk about a couple issues on a podcast and be great following.
It does seem like also, and I've heard this from a lot of people, a lot of these bridges grew because either maybe they would have grown anyway, but they grew as COVID came. I certainly considered, my doctor friend in Washington to be a good friend at times, and he was totally on board with all of the COVID restrictions and
masks and the distance.
And to his credit, he was fully doing it too.
Right.
He was telling you it wasn't finger wagging at people. He was doing it as well. But I've because most of this was just for me and not I was never in favor of it. It just and it really bothered me that it went this way. I'm a part of me is thinking that maybe it's been a wake up call for a lot of people, or at least enough people that I don't know if this will ever be implemented again. But
they're not going to do it in Florida, not for a long time.
Enemies of freedom are going to go back and regroup, and they're going to try something. It just scares me to think of what they're going to try. And
that's true.
But because they're not just going to go away.
Right.
But who knows?
Which I think goes to say that, hey, yes, it's good to be organized, both, in the political party as well as just social connections in general. But also it's just more important than ever to improve yourself and to, do what you can for yourself to gain wealth, gain assets, gain protection. against what they might do.
Yeah,
so,
I think we're getting to a good stopping point here. Do you have anything else you want to say before we go and wrap this up?
Let's see. I guess for like 30 seconds, I want to talk about DeSantis, if I may.
It can be 4 or 5. It can be 4 or 5 minutes if you want.
Sure. No, but just 30 seconds. You did ask me about DeSantis.
Yeah.
In general, he became the best on COVID after being run-of-the-mill bad for the first few months. And yes, he not only went back on everything, but he effectively came as close to apologizing as any politician has ever come to apologizing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he's run-of-the-mill on the budget. You know, he spends the largest amount of money every year that the state of Florida has ever spent. So he's typically bad on, fiscally, as far as Florida Republican goes, which means still balancing the budget and not giving tons of lavish benefits to state employees.
Yeah.
He sort of really did the will of the people early on by expanding medical marijuana, which the Florida voters had voted for well over 60. We got like 65 or 68% of the vote the second time it went. First time it failed with only 58%. Constitutional amendment needs 60%. So a couple of years before he was inaugurated, medical marijuana passed, and Scott and the Republicans were saying suppository only and then oils and whatever, but he expanded it, DeSantis did, so you can pretty much get whatever you want in the shops, as far as I know. I'm not a patient, but this is what friends tell me. He got closer to implementing the felon voters' rights. Not that that's inherently libertarian, but it's not. Yeah. It's not inherently anti-libertarian either. But it is a will of the voters, where more than 60% of the Florida voters, voted to amend the Constitution, say that once felons do their time, they should have their voting rights restored. And there was news that suggested DeSantis did something bad, but it was actually him making it less onerous than it had been under the initial regime that Scott set up. Yeah. So maybe not ideal, but closer to what the Florida voters voted for initially. So look, on several things I give him definite credit for, and no doubt taking shots against Fauci and against the New World Order. And then you have Trump calling DeSantis, DeSanctimonious. I don't know what Trump is doing. I've already thought Trump is a psyop, regardless of whether he knows it or not. The last couple of years, I'm beginning to think that Trump isn't as smart as I thought he was. I knew he wasn't philosophical and didn't care about policy, but I still thought he was smart. He might not even be smart. I don't know.
He's been an overgrown frat boy, and I think he just likes seeing himself on TV. And if I'm a Republican running for office this year or next year, I'm going to tell Donald Trump to stay the hell away from me. I might even go out and file a restraining order on him. I mean, seriously, because DeSantis attacks. I mean, Trump attacks DeSantis, and DeSantis really did amazingly well. I mean, and it's certainly, the other thing too is, and granted, I don't want to go totally fanboying on DeSantis, but that a guy actually a politician in any position actually admitting that he made a mistake is
effectively, yeah.
He
said he made a mistake. He effectively apologized. That's what. Yes.
Yeah. Coming close to apologizing, although there's no way you can possibly undo the damage, but it is to his credit that he at least does that and is trying to look for some redemption. Right. And I know his
brought in the Great Barrington Declaration epidemiologists.
Yes.
Gupta. Jay Bhattacharya, Martin Koldorf. He stayed enforcement of all COVID-related fines and eventually remitted all balances for COVID-related fines, which included me, who was arrested for a misdemeanor charge of just being peacefully on a beach, which was allegedly closed due to COVID orders.
Yes.
That's a whole other thing. We don't need to go deep down this, but long story short, April 19, 2020, Patriots Day, anniversary of Lexington and Concord, I went out in protest of the beach closures in commemoration of the Patriots in Massachusetts who stood that day. I wasn't armed nor looking for a fight. I was simply wanting to live free.
Yeah, I don't think Greg Abbott in Texas has sought any redemption. And this is the thing: is for every Christine Nome, there are 10 Greg Abbotts. It's just so. But maybe I don't know where we'd rate DeSantis on governors. He probably does go into the top 5.
Yeah.
Christine Nome is certainly number 1, and the governor of Hawaii is probably the last one. although there are a few others that are.
Whitmer's probably got to be pretty close to.
Yeah, Whitmer's bad. Yeah, Whitmer's definitely down there. Hawaii was absolutely horrible. I mean, like they were, restrictions like going between the counties and stuff like that. Any places that were, all the islands were bad. They were really bad because they can do it easily.
Right.
But yeah, so
anyway, other than that, wanted to mention DeSantis. Yeah. I think I've pretty much covered all the relevant, Liberty stuff. I like the Mises Caucus. I hope that we go Dave Smith 2024, and definitely supporting him for president. I guess nothing else of importance that I can think of right now. I'll see you all at Pork Fest and at Libertarian Party conventions and at Tom Woods events.
We'll see what's going on there. Yeah, I'm still undecided about who I might support in 2024. I've been saying for a while that I want that. He's going to hang up his football helmet pretty soon. I'd love to see the LP go after Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers did he say some things about the shots or?
Yeah, he was against the COVID vaccination. He was speaking at the Bitcoin conference. He's the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers basically is a libertarian. Gerald Salenti also suggested, maybe Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would run. That would certainly give us some name recognition. Dave has some excellent qualities, and he's definitely fighting the good fights, though. But I'd like to see maybe Spike throw his hat in there. It's still a long way to go.
Oh, I love Spike. I would love to see a Dave Spike ticket, for example. But I don't know if Spike would go for a VP slot again. But if I may, so it's Taggart Trading is the name of my business.
Yes.
You can reach it at taggarttrading.com, TAGGART trading.
Yes.
Also, you can reach it at southfloridabullion.com.
Okay, yeah.
Email me at marc@taggarttrading.com or submit a form through my website.
Yes.
I don't talk to anybody about if they want to get into gold and silver or sell gold or silver or liquidate an old coin collection or accumulation. I'd love to help you out with any of that. I work close. I give free good information. And I have lots of references in the Liberty movement in Florida and all over the country.
Okay, Mark. Well, thank you for coming on. It's been good having you.
Chris, thank you for having
me. Hit the like button, subscribe to this Fountainhead Forum channel, and thank you very much for tuning in. We are out.